I love this camera so much. Yeah, I've in another life I was a photographer, and I have a massive.
Creature like that, how would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. It's horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.
Beyond the shadows. The man said he woke up every night at exactly 3:12 a.m., unable to move, staring at a tall shadow in the corner of his bedroom while a high-pitched buzzing filled his ears like electricity in his skull. He told his sister it felt like something was watching him, waiting, studying him, and that sometimes bright light poured through his window even though nothing was outside. 3 days after his last episode, he left his house for a short walk in sub-zero temperatures, dressed too lightly for the cold, and was never seen again. His body was later found miles from town, in a place that made no sense for anyone to reach on foot. Tonight, on Beyond the Shadows podcast, we are discussing
The fourth kind. A little loose definition here. Loose definition. Sorry about that. Loose definition. We are discussing the fourth kind. Welcome, everyone. I'm your host, Victus, and this is Beyond the Shadows podcast, where we record a live podcast every week, one take, no edits, and try to figure out if this week's case is really paranormal or bullshit. This week, we are discussing the real disappearances and terrifying events in Nome, Alaska. The cases that inspired the movie The Fourth Kind. Yes, so we're doing something a little different. This almost touches the world of true crime. Yeah. But there's a paranormal twist here, and it doesn't make sense. We'll get into why I want to do this after we do all of our intros and stuff. But welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. I am your host, Victus. I hope everyone's well. I hope everyone is well. Season 3, Episode 5. Beyond the Shadows podcast. Make sure I got all this information. Yes, everything looks like it's in correctly. Welcome in, everybody. Before we get going, I do want to give a quick shout out to Ingrid for subscribing on YouTube this week. Thank you so much, Ingrid. You're the best. You're the best. You're the best. Thank you so much for your subscription on YouTube. Thank you. I did get a couple people on Twitch, but it was right after we rated our buddy last week. I missed who it was, and I'm sorry. Let me see if I can pull it up. I might be able to pull it up. Just gonna take a second. But yeah, we did a good little raid. We rated a friend of a viewer's, and it looked good. We had some fun. Let's go to my creator dashboard. Let's find out. We're gonna see community followers list. Woltering, Actually Sparky, Dreamy Bacon. Thank you, Woltering, Actually Sparky, and Dreamy Bacon for your follow last week. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Those were 3 followers on Twitch. In case you guys are wondering and listening at home, you can watch this live on Twitch every Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But we are streaming simultaneously live on YouTube. What's up, people on YouTube? And we're also streaming live on Facebook. Hello, Facebookians. Welcome in, everybody. Welcome in. So glad to have everybody here. Somebody new names. I love getting new followers. It's a joy to. It is an absolute joy when we get new followers because we get so few, and I'm grateful for every single one. I really am. Thank you, everybody. Before we get too far into everything, we have this week's News and Paranormal, and we've got a new scene. I set up a new scene just for this week's News and Paranormal. I'm really excited to share it with everybody. It's a little basic, but we're going to have some fun with it. So before we get started, we're going to get into this segment where we take a quick look at the strangest, creepiest, and most unexpected stories making headlines around the world this week and try to figure out if we're witnessing something truly paranormal or just humanity being weird again. This is this week's News in Paranormal. Check out the scene. How cool is this, right? I want to set up like a fake desk to be in front of me, but I don't do the green screen thing anymore, so I thought this was fun. Authorities in rural Texas are investigating multiple reports of a massive triangular object hovering silently over farmland late at night. Witnesses describe bright white lights at each corner and that the craft remained completely still before shooting straight upward at extreme speed. No military exercises or commercial aircraft were logged in the area at the time. And over in England, homeowners in a 200-year-old property captured security footage showing doors opening on their own and furniture shifting across the floor. Paranormal investigators later reported sudden cold spots and electronic interference during an overnight visit, with activity reportedly increasing over the past few weeks. Hikers in a remote region of Peru claimed they encountered a tall, pale humanoid figure watching them from the jungle tree line before disappearing without making a sound. One witness said they experienced dizziness and ringing in their ears immediately afterward, while another reported their phone camera malfunctioned when trying to record. And over on the other side of the world, off the coast of Japan, fishermen reported glowing orbs rising out of the ocean and hovering briefly above the water before vanishing into the clouds. Similar sightings have been documented in the region for decades, but scientists still have no clear explanation for the phenomenon. And back in the US of A, hospital staff in Arizona are once again sharing reports of shadowy figures seen standing at the end of a hallway during early morning hours. Motion sensors have been triggered repeatedly while no physical person is present. Several employees say the sightings all happen around the same time each night. So this week it was short but sweet, but that wraps up this week's News and Paranormal, where the world continues to remind us that no matter how advanced we think we are, there are still things happening around us we can't explain and maybe aren't meant to. That's your week's News in Paranormal. Fantastic. I hope you all enjoy the new scene. I hope it looks good. So, we're dealing with some minor true crime, but not true crime at the same time. That's hard to say. So we got on the phone with the FBI this week, and I'm like, what's going on in Nome, Alaska? Tell me something. Tell me what's going on. And the guy at the desk who answered the phone's like, hey, man, I can only tell you after you answer this one question. He leaned in real close to the microphone or the handset on the phone, and he's like, hey, man, I just gotta know. Gotta know. What shirt are you wearing today? All right, so a little bit of background. So my wife and I, our nicknames for each other are Bean. We call each other Bean. And it was either my birthday, I think it was birthday this year. My wife is the best at gift giving, and she got me this shirt. Check this thing out. Roll that beautiful Bean footage. It's official Bush and Baked Beans swag. It's a pretty cool little shirt. I like the weird ones that you can't really find anywhere. I thought this one was really cool. I really did. But yeah, that's what shirt I'm wearing today. Roll that beautiful bean footage, folks. Everybody's seen those commercials, right? Right? All right, so I said that I was going to explain why I think tonight's episode will be good. And I have a reason. I do. Wow, my mouse did not quit. The battery fell out. Oh, come on, mouse. What are you doing? Wow, maybe my mouse did just die. Awesome. It just keeps getting better. I think I have one AA battery hanging around. It's always something, isn't it? Always something. Hopefully this thing gets some juice. Yeah. There we go. Need to put that on the charger. I love rechargeable batteries. So I do listen to a lot of podcasts. As a podcaster, I always listen to other podcasts, and it was honestly listening to other podcasts that made me decide to want to do a podcast, right? Because I do listen to paranormal podcasts. I listen to true crime, lots of true crime. It's horribly interesting. Shout out Crime Junkie. And there's this one that I've been listening to for a good while now called Up and Vanished. So the host, Payne Lindsay, does this super, super, super deep dive investigations into missing persons. And he physically goes to the locations where these people are missing from. And when he's there, like he asks the questions that nobody wants to ask, right? Like, where were you when this happened? Where were you when this happened? I think my camera angle's a little messed up. Hold on. No, let's sit to the right. Okay, whatever. It's fine. But he does like the hard-hitting questions. So like a police officer can't just like run up to somebody and say, "Hey, we heard that you were part of this," or "Hey, we think that you're involved in this crime. Can you tell us what you think?" He will just like cold call people that are involved in missing persons that nobody wants to talk to, that people are afraid of. And this last season started out with the disappearance of a woman named Florence Okpialek. I'm probably mispronouncing her name. And while doing the investigation for Florence Okpialek's disappearance, there was also another disappearance that happened very, very shortly after. That was before. His name was Jason Balderas, just straight up disappeared. And I've been listening to this podcast for like 2 years now, easy. Great little podcast, great investigative journalism. They do a really good job of really piecing it all together and making it engaging and informative and entertaining, while really unraveling some true crime. And they dropped a new episode, the first one in probably like 6 or 8 months, last week, and I didn't listen to it until yesterday at work. And I was listening to it, and I kept racking my brain. I'm like, Nome, Alaska. Why is Nome, Alaska ringing in my head? Because they kept talking about Nome, Alaska. Nome is where, the show starts. And so, I go back into the older episodes and I find out, oh yeah, they all originally disappeared from Nome, Alaska. And I was like, why does Disappearances in Nome, Alaska sound so familiar to me? And then it hit me. I remembered seeing the movie The Fourth Kind. It's the movie with Mila Jovovich where she goes and she's like a clinical psychiatrist and does regression hypnosis with people that are having missing time and people going missing in Nome, Alaska. Ends up being this, spoiler alert, I mean from what, 2000, hold on, let me find out exactly when this movie came out. 2009, so spoiler alert if you haven't seen it by now. It ends up being extraterrestrials at the end of the movie. And I remember at the beginning of the movie, there was this really creepy little scene where Mila Jovovich says, you know, this entire movie is based on true events. And they played it off like there was some found footage and some other things. Made for a really interesting movie, and I love the movie. I've seen it a bunch of times, right? So I did some digging, and I'm like, what if there really is something going on with this? Is there really huge groups of people disappearing from Nome, Alaska? Come to find out there is, and there's no explanation for it. So we are going to, tonight, look at the disappearances of all the people from Nome, Alaska, starting in the 1970s up until 2020. It's like every couple of years somebody goes missing. I think we're up to like 27 people missing already. 25, 27 people missing already. They just disappear, right? And a lot of people say it's like natural causes, like it's extraterrestrial, or not extraterrestrial. It's like they're going out in the wilderness, they're getting killed by bears. But I don't necessarily think this is true. I think we're looking at something else here. I never put the two together until just this weekend. I actually scrapped the original idea I had for tonight's episode just to talk about this. And I think this is going to be a good episode because we're looking at something that has foundation in reality. These people really went missing, and nobody knows where they went. I'm going to say it wasn't bear attacks, because bear attacks, the bears destroy the person. You will find a bloody spot. You will find shreds of clothes, but these people just disappeared. Nothing. Gone. So it makes for a really interesting story, and I'm hoping the way everything's written tonight makes for an engaging podcast tonight. I did my best to make everything sound as good as I could. I do want to give a shout out to the 2009 sci-fi horror movie, The Fourth Kind. I don't know who to give credit to. Kudos to whoever did the directing and, you know, all of the actors, actresses, all the writing. You know, it all comes, the concept for this episode tonight comes from the movie The Fourth Kind, but it does have foundation in reality. People really did go missing, and they really don't know where they went. So that's what we're going to do tonight. We're going to look at all these missing person cases, and we're going to see if these are really paranormal or if they just got killed by somebody. You know, is there a rational explanation for what's going on, or are we looking at something paranormal? So I hope y'all are ready for this. Yeah, buckle up, because it's about to get messy. Real messy. So I see we got a couple people on YouTube, a couple people on Twitch watching. Crack your drinks, everybody. We got them. We're going to have some fun tonight. We're going to have some freaking fun. I hope y'all are ready. So without further ado, this is Season 3, Episode 5 of Beyond the Shadows podcast, The Fourth Kind. Disappearances in Nome, Alaska. Let's get into it. Let's fade out this music. Fade it out. Let's get the spooky stuff in here. Oh, and speech chat is active. If anybody wants to pop in chat and talk, totally cool. Speech chat is live. Do your thing, everybody. I haven't tested it yet. Let's do a little test.
They are watching us.
Yeah. Sounds good to me. Cool. Let's get into it, everybody. Let's get into it. Also, shout out again to Poke Your Eyes Out Radio for this awesome backing track that we're going to be using tonight. Poke Your Eyes Out Radio. We'll give them a shout out here towards the end. You know what? Let's just do it right now. I think I got that right.
Go check out Poke Your Eyes Out Radio at twitch.tv/Poke Your Eyes Out Radio and go show them some love.
All right, kids, let's get into it. Anybody watching, if you could tell me if the background sounds are too loud or not, I'd really appreciate it. It's hard to get my balance from my headphones. This is Act 1, everybody, Act 1. So Nome, Alaska sits on the western edge of the state, along the frozen waters of the Bering Sea. So remote that there are no roads connecting it to the rest of Alaska. The only way in or out is by plane or by boat. And during the winter months, these options can disappear when storms roll in. For much of the year, Nome exists in a near total isolation. Too loud. Gotcha.
Too
I got you.
loud.
Gotcha. We're going to turn it down just a little bit. Thank you. I appreciate that. How does that sound? Does that sound better?
Loud.
A little bit of delay. That's okay. We cut it in half. So for much of the year, Nome exists in near total isolation. The sun barely rises in December and vanishes almost completely in January, leaving the town wrapped in darkness for weeks at a time. Temperatures regularly drop far below zero, and winds off the sea can turn exposed skin numb in minutes. This is not the place... Okay, fantastic.
Much better.
Thank you, sir. Thank you kindly. I appreciate that. I'm going to make note of this decibel level, and we're going to stick there. This is not a place where people can casually wander off and survive. It's a place that demands respect, and yet people have lived here for generations, long before gold miners arrived during the Alaskan Gold Rush. Oh, geez, I'm trying to pronounce this. Inupiat, there we go. Inupiat communities thrived in this region, passing down survival knowledge that allowed them to navigate one of the harshest environments on Earth. Modern residents grew up learning how to dress for the cold, how to travel safely across the ice and tundra, and how quickly the weather can turn deadly. These were not inexperienced tourists. These were people who understood the land. And that's what made the disappearances so disturbing. At first, everything seemed explainable. A hunter didn't return from a trip. A man left his home late at night and never came back. Someone wandered into a storm and was later found frozen. In Alaska, exposure deaths happen. The environment is brutal and mistakes can be fatal. But as the years passed, the number of cases quietly grew, and certain details started to feel wrong. Some of the people who vanished were experienced outdoorsmen who would never leave without proper gear. Others were found miles from where they should have been, in areas that made no logical sense for someone to reach on foot in extreme cold. A few were discovered without boots or heavy clothing, as if they had walked straight into deadly temperatures unprepared. Official reports often ruled these deaths as accidental or due to exposure, but families and locals struggled to accept that explanation. People who had lived their entire lives in the Arctic didn't simply forget how dangerous the cold was. And around the same time, doctors in Nome began seeing an unusual number of patients complaining of sleep paralysis. On its own, sleep paralysis isn't rare, but what stood out were how similar the experiences were. People describing waking up unable to move, fully awake but frozen in place. Many said there was a presence in the room, a tall, shadowy figure standing near the bed, pressure on their chest, a buzzing or ringing sound in their ears, an overwhelming sense of fear so intense they were convinced they were about to die. And some swore they saw glowing eyes watching them from the darkness. And one detail kept coming up again and again. Owls. Multiple patients reported seeing owls outside their windows shortly before these episodes began. Owls perched silently on rooftops, owls staring through the glass late at night, owls appearing in places where owls weren't normally seen. After that, the paralysis would start. After that, some would experience missing time, and in a few cases not long afterward, the person would disappear entirely. Families started connecting the dots that no one wanted to talk about. A woman who suffered repeated night terrors vanished while walking home. A man who told his friends about shadow figures was later found frozen far outside of town without boots. Another resident reported strange lights in the sky days before being discovered dead beyond the city limits. Each incident on its own could be brushed off as coincidence, but together, they form a pattern that felt impossible to ignore. Then came reports of the lights. People described strange glowing objects hovering over the tundra outside Nome, silent movements across the sky, bright flashes in remote areas where no aircraft should have been. Some said the lights looked like stars that moved the wrong way. Others claimed they were low enough to see a shape in motion. Law enforcement occasionally received calls but never found anything they investigated. Still, the theories in the stories kept coming. Lights in the sky, shadows in the bedrooms, paralysis in the night, disappearances in the cold, all centered around the same small, isolated region. What made it more unsettling was that long before modern UFO stories existed, the Inupiat legends spoke of tall beings that watched humans from a distance, entities that visit people at night, and forces that could lure someone away into the wilderness, but they would never return. These weren't ghost stories. These weren't demon tales. They were described as something different, something that came from above. And by the late 1990s and early 2000s, Nome had one of the highest missing person rates per capita in Alaska. Some individuals were eventually found. Many never were. Investigations continued, but no single explanation tied everything together in a way that made sense. Except for one unsettling truth. In a shocking number of cases, people reported strange nighttime encounters before they vanished. And that's the real foundation behind the story that would later inspire the Hollywood movie. Not dramatic hypnosis sessions, no found footage, but a quiet pattern of fear growing inside a town where something felt deeply wrong, and no one could prove why. Ooh, that writing is on point tonight, folks. See, this is good. You see, when there's a good foundation, damn it, the writing just comes across so much better. So, like, I know the majority of the story, and like I'm engaged, and I know the damn story. Oh, geez, yeah, this is some good writing. This is gonna make for a good episode. So yeah, in a nutshell, we've got people just disappearing without reason. So this isn't unheard of, but I will say the numbers were crunched. And for a span of 10 years, from 1990 to 2000, Nome, Alaska did have the highest missing person rate per capita in the United States. People were just disappearing, right? Just straight disappearing. Let's break it down a little bit, okay? So we know a little bit about sleep paralysis because we talked about it last season. Sleep paralysis is not unheard of, right? But there is an element in this that makes things a little weird, and that's the owl. You know, let me grab an image and show you this fucking owl. This owl that they use in the movies. It's just, yeah, it gets me. It gets me every time. It's so good. Come on, play the GIFs already, would you? Yeah. Yeah, check this out. This little son of a bitch. So these are snowy owls. Just about what you'd expect when you think about owls. So when I say the owl from the fourth kind, these are what Jesus, that one's spooky as fucking hell. Ugh. Owls are just fucking spooky, man. They're just there's something about them. Oh yeah, that was a good one. One of my favorite scenes from that movie. They do like a full 360 on this owl and it watches the camera the whole time. Fuck a doodle do. Oh my gosh, dude. The cinematography was so good in this. I'm going to gush a lot about this movie tonight. This is a really good movie. Anybody that's into the paranormal and hasn't seen The Fourth Kind, go and watch it. You're going to love this movie. I guarantee it. So this is the weird consistency between the sleep paralysis and the disappearances is people were seeing this owl. It's just a regular, I'm pretty sure it's just a regular snowy owl. A snowy owl? Snow owl? Yeah, but like its eyes are different. Or is that a barn owl? Oh, it's a barn owl. Oh yeah, just seeing them. Yeah, those little bastards are spooky no matter how you cut it. It's the eyes and the weird face. Hawaiian. Hold on. Is the barn owl native to Alaska? No, the barn owl is not native to Alaska and has not established breeding populations there. While widespread across the globe, and they avoid cold polar regions and are generally absent in Alaska due to harsh winters. Interesting. So it says here that extremely rare sightings of barn owls in Alaska are considered accidental or rare wanderers. So it's strange that they're seeing barn owls, right? They're seeing a bird that's just not supposed to be there. But can you imagine, middle of the night, waking up, can't sleep, you feel something just kind of watching you, and you see this little son of a bitch poking his head through the window? Yeah. Fucking nightmare fuel. Absolutely nightmare fuel. So strange that we're seeing a barn owl in an area where they're not even supposed to be. I assumed it was a snow owl. I was wrong. So yeah, a weird parallel drawn between individual cases where people are saying they're seeing a barn owl and it's looking through their window, or they're seeing it outside, or it's in a place where they can see it clearly through their window, right? And not but moments before hold on a second. Hold on. Okay. Not but moments before sleep paralysis kicks in, right? I can't think of any case that I know off the top of my head where the precursor to sleep paralysis is seeing an owl, right? Usually the sleep paralysis is, preambled by some type of bad dream or nightmare, or you just wake up because you think you hear something in the room, right? This one's already kind of deviating from what we believe to be, a standard for sleep paralysis. Owls. And of course, they're just fucking spooky on top of it, so this is just weird, right? Absolutely fucking weird. So we'll say that not every person saw the owls, but there was an overwhelming number of people that saw the owls before the sleep paralysis, before seeing somebody in the room, before seeing lights in the room, and before disappearing. However, there are some things that do kind of run in line with Sleep paralysis. Okay, so feeling like something's in the room with you. That's a sleep paralysis thing. The pressure on the chest. That's a sleep paralysis thing. Seeing a shadowy figure in the room. That's a sleep paralysis thing. But seeing eyes illuminated outside your window is not a sleep paralysis thing. That's a new one. All right? So we're already... I mean, I'm getting fucking chills. I need to turn this fucking... Get rid of this damn thing. I'm tired of looking at it, spooking me out. I'm gonna have bad dreams tonight, folks. Oof. So yeah, we're getting some weird consistency, some weird parallels. I feel good about this episode already. I really do. This is going to be a good one. So let's dive off into Act 2, everybody. Act 2, the disappearances that made no sense. For years, the vanishings around Nome were treated as isolated tragedies. A man didn't return from a walk. A hunter never came home. Someone was later found frozen in an open wilderness. In a region as unforgiving as western Alaska, authorities often defaulted to the same conclusion: exposure, disorientation, alcohol, or simple misjudgment. On paper, the explanation sounded reasonable, but when families began laying the timeline side by side, their stories started to unravel. One of the most troubling aspects of how sudden disappearances were... Excuse me, I totally misread that sentence. One of the most troubling aspects was how sudden people disappeared. These weren't long wilderness expeditions gone wrong, and in many cases, individuals were only supposed to be gone a few minutes. A short walk home, a quick trip outside, a brief errand, and they were never seen again. Search teams would be launched almost immediately, and volunteers on snowmobiles swept the tundra. Helicopters scanned frozen rivers, open fields. Dogs tracked the scent trails that sometimes ended abruptly, as if the person simply vanished into the thin air. When bodies were found eventually, if they were found, they were often located far beyond where someone could reasonably wander in extreme cold, especially without proper clothing or supplies. In several cases, the missing were experienced outdoorsmen who knew exactly how dangerous the Arctic could be. These people who grew up navigating storms, ice, and sub-zero temperatures, yet some of them were found without boots. Others were found without heavy coats. A few were discovered in positions that suggested confusion or panic rather than gradual hypothermia. It was as if they had fled something rather than slowly succumbing to the cold. And what disturbed families the most was how many victims had expressed fear shortly before they vanished. Some told loved ones they hadn't been sleeping well. Others spoke about strange dreams or waking up frozen in place. A few mentioned shadows in their rooms or were present watching them. These weren't stories told years later after memories faded. Many were shared days, sometimes hours before the person disappeared. In one widely discussed case, a man left his house late at night for what should have been a short walk. He never arrived at his destination, and when search crews eventually found his body 17 miles outside town, he was dressed lightly for the weather. Temperatures that night were well below zero, and locals knew no one familiar with the area would travel that far unprotected. His family later revealed that he had been complaining about terrifying nighttime experiences in the weeks leading up to his death. Another disappearance involved a woman who had repeatedly spoken about waking up unable to move and feeling something in her bedroom. She told relatives she felt watched. She said the fear was so intense she avoided sleeping. Not long after, she vanished while walking home. Despite extensive searches, no trace of her was ever found. And then there were the cases where the bodies were discovered in places that defied logic. Some were located across frozen rivers or in open tundra far away from a direct walking path. Others were found in areas that had already been searched thoroughly days earlier, as if they had appeared after the fact. In a few instances, there were no clear tracks leading to or from where the person was discovered, even though the snow would have easily preserved any of the footprints. Officials continued labeling most deaths as exposure, but quietly among locals, that explanation stopped feeling satisfying. Because exposure doesn't explain why experienced residents removed clothing. It doesn't explain why scent trails ended abruptly. It doesn't explain why people wandered extraordinarily far distances in deadly cold. And it doesn't explain why so many people reported the same strange experiences beforehand. As the number of cases grew, Nome began to develop an unspoken fear. Parents worried when children stayed out too late. Neighbors checked on one another more often, and people avoided walking alone at night when darkness stretched nearly 24 hours a day. The wilderness, which had been dangerous before, now felt different, as if something unseen was moving through it. And then came the stories that pushed fear into something closer to terror. A few residents claimed they had seen strange lights hovering beyond the edge of the town shortly before someone went missing. Others described bright flashes in the distance over frozen fields and rivers. Some said the lights moved silently, changing direction in ways no aircraft could. At first, these reports were shrugged off, but as they began lining up with disappearance timelines, people started paying attention. One search volunteer later admitted that while scanning the tundra one night, he saw a bright object in the sky that stopped suddenly, hovered, and then shot upward at an incredible speed. He didn't report it officially. He didn't want to sound crazy, but when another volunteer quietly said that he'd seen the same thing weeks earlier, the coincidence became harder to ignore. The official stance never changed. Tragedies happen. Alaska is dangerous. People get lost. But within Nome, a different belief was forming. That whatever was happening wasn't just bad luck. That something was interfering. That people weren't simply wandering off into the cold, they were being drawn out, or chased, or taken. And by the early 2000s, Nome had earned a grim reputation for unexplained vanishings. Some researchers later noted that per capita, the missing persons rate in that region was shockingly high compared to most parts of the United States. Yet some cases faded quietly into cold files. No dramatic press conferences, no breakthroughs, just families left without answers. And hovering over it all was the same disturbing thread. Nighttime encounters, paralysis, shadow figures, strange lights, then disappearances. And in Act 3, we're going to focus directly on those nighttime experiences, the sleep paralysis epidemic that swept through Nome, and why so many people describe the same terrifying beings in their rooms. Because that's where the story takes a turn from tragic to something far more unsettling. All right. A lot to take in, let's see, we got a bunch of people watching on YouTube. Hey, everybody, how's it going? Welcome in. Welcome, everybody, on YouTube. If you're new to the channel, welcome in. My name's Victus. We are a live podcast. We do no edits. You're welcome to chat. We do have a speech chat open. Anybody can chat. I'm a human. I would talk back to you. I would rather have a conversation than read a script any day. Tonight we're discussing the actual disappearances of Nome, Alaska from 1970s up until 2020 that inspired the movie The Fourth Kind. And it wasn't just disappearances, it was strange happenings, high strangeness in the purest form, lights in the skies, shadow figures, sleep paralysis, owls, barn owls in a state where we're not supposed to see barn owls. A really strange case so far. So far, we've only gone through Act 1 and 2. So we've started doing the big sweeps here. We're looking at the big, heavily known cases. People just disappearing. So this is this kind of ties into something that I wanted to talk about back in season 1, but I couldn't collate enough data to really make a good episode on it. And it's about disappearances in national forests. So there is an epidemic of sorts of people disappearing in national forests, specifically like state parks, things like this. And like in this case, where they're following a scent trail with scent tracking dogs, they will track people in these state parks through the woods for miles and miles and miles. And the scent trail will stop at a sheer cliff that goes up much higher than the person that went disappearing could have done. A lot of cases, we hear about children that go missing. Families will be hiking through trails or on trails through national forests, and they will turn around, see all their kids, 2 or 3 kids, turn around because they hear a noise, maybe 5-10 seconds, turn back. 2 of the kids are missing. This is, and I'm going to tell you a quick little story, and this is why I wanted to get this on an episode, but there's just not enough beef to flesh out 2 hours. The most famous story comes from the early 90s, where a family of 4, a husband, wife, 2 kids, were hiking. I couldn't tell you what park they were hiking through. It's been a few years since I've heard this whole story. They were hiking, and one of the adults lost their footing and stumbled, broke visual contact with the children for no more than 15 seconds. Turned around, 2 kids are gone. So immediately, parents start freaking out, right? One parent stays behind, starts searching the area. The other one runs back, grabs a park ranger. They bring out scent tracking dogs. They track these children's scent for like 25 miles, right? Children, I'm talking like 5 and 6 years old, for like 25 miles. The scent trail ends at a sheer cliff that goes up. So, what do? They call in the helicopters. They go to the top of this cliff. It took a helicopter to get to the top of this cliff, right? They get up there, and the 2 children are there. But they're dead, right? Or no, one is dead, one is alive. They do an autopsy on the one that died. Somebody had been feeding them. And the older of the 2 children, the one that survived, was a little boy, and he said that as soon as his parents turned around, a man stepped from the woods, and all he could say was the man's face was wrong. And when he drew a picture of this man, he said that he had to face something like a bear. That's all he would say. So this man held the oldest child by the hand, and the younger girl put him on his shoulders, and they walked through the woods. Took him to the top of the cliff, and both of them black out. They find both kids up there. All in all, they had moved from the spot that they disappeared like 112 miles. But get this, they did it in like an hour. They do not know what happened. Judging by the appearance of the boy, the girl that passed, she had died of exposure. But how do you die of exposure in an hour in a very moderate temperature? It's like summertime. And judging by the condition of the children, it looked like they had been out in the woods for weeks, but they had only been missing for a half a day. And this is just one of many, many, many stories of people going missing in national forests. Not just national forests, but people just disappear in the forest all the time. Look at the Bridgewater Triangle. We talked about that last season. The Bridgewater Triangle is wild. Did we talk about the Bridgewater Triangle last season? I don't remember. I think we did. Let me check right quick. I'm pretty sure we talked about the Bridgewater Triangle because it was like dealing with a lot of shit that I'd like to tie in with other episodes. The Bridgewater Triangle is a lot like the Bermuda Triangle. However, this is in the middle of nowhere. This is in the middle of the woods. Yeah, season 2, episode 40 was the Bridgewater Triangle. Great episode. If you haven't listened to it, you don't know anything about it, go back and check it out. We're all over YouTube. Check it out. It's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever. The Bridgewater Triangle was a heavy place where people would just fucking disappear. Like, there were a few instances where people would walk into the woods and there would literally be a pop, like a bubble bursting, and the person was gone. They would see somebody walking. They pass behind a tree, no wider than this. They never come out the other side of the tree. The Bridgewater Triangle is messed up. Y'all think the Bermuda Triangle was bad. Check out the Bridgewater Triangle. So, people going missing in the woods is not unheard of. It's not a strange thing. But canonically speaking, the woods is where majority of spiritual things would happen, right? When I say spiritual, I don't mean like Christian or Buddhist, whatever, but things like, you know, witches doing rituals would often do their stuff in the wilderness because they would feel like they're closer to nature. It's a thing. In the Bridgewater Triangle, there was rumors, you know, the apex of the Bridgewater Triangle happened to be during the 90s, during the Satanic Panic anyway. You know, take that for what it's worth. But there were reports of, like, satanic cults doing rituals in the woods, symbols carved into trees. And the prevailing theory behind the Bridgewater Triangle is there's a portal to another dimension there. And it makes you think that there might be some type of parallel between the forest and alternate dimensions, parallel universes. You know, this is the same thing, like, why haven't we found Bigfoot? This is because a lot of people are saying now he could be an interdimensional being, and that's why we don't see him anywhere, because he travels in between dimensions. And this kind of lends credence to the idea that the woods do hold some type of spiritual power, some type of energy that can't be explained. I know I'm rambling, but there is credence to people disappearing in the forest. There's a reason we have fairy tales from, you know, like the 1600s where people were talking about don't go into the woods because, you know, the evil is there, the dark is there. You don't know what's going to happen. Think of every single fairy tale that says don't go into the woods. You know, there's 15, 20 of them. And inevitably the character does go into the woods and they get themselves into trouble. There's a reason we say this, and it's ingrained into us from a very, very early age. Safety is in the open. Unless you have, you know, 15, 20 people go into the woods, sure, now there's safety in numbers. It dates back to like medieval times. You know, you're not going to go into wooded area you don't know because you don't know what could be hiding in there. It's ingrained into us. There's a word for it. I can't think of what it is. Where you just know things without needing to be taught it. But I'm a rambling. So, that being said, hold on, I got a message. What is this? Oh. Yeah, homie just sent me a link to a sweet Sony CRT from the 70s. Love me some old school TVs. We're going to get off into Act 3, everybody. Act 3, The Night Visitors. This is where we're going to break down what people were seeing in their bedrooms. what they were seeing before the disappearances, what they were seeing before the sleep paralysis kicked in. I hope y'all are ready. Act 3, everybody. Act 3, The Night Visitors. So by the late 1990s, the disappearances around Nome were no longer the only thing worrying residents. Doctors, counselors, and family members were hearing the same disturbing stories repeated again and again. People waking up in the middle of the night, completely unable to move, fully aware of their surroundings, but paralyzed as if their bodies no longer belonged to them. At first, the episodes were chalked up to stress, exhaustion, or the long Arctic darkness that could throw off sleep cycles. But what made these cases different was not the paralysis itself. It was what people saw during the paralysis. Many described a tall, dark figure standing in their bedroom. Not a vague shadow, but something with shape and presence, often thin, elongated, and unmoving. Some said it stood in the corner of the room. Others said it was right beside the bed. A few claimed it leaned over them, close enough that they could feel its presence without being touched. Almost everyone described the same overwhelming fear. Not a nightmare panic, not a confusion, but a deep instinctual fear. The kind that feels like prey realizing they're being watched. Several people reported high-pitched buzzing or humming sounds in their ears as the paralysis began. Others felt intense pressure on their chest, as if something heavy was holding them down. A few claimed they could feel vibrations moving through their body, almost like electricity. And then there was the light. Some residents said that their rooms would suddenly fill with a bright glow, usually coming from a window. Others described flashes outside their home just before waking up frozen in place. A handful insisted they saw the shadow figure silhouetted against the light, as if something was hovering just beyond the glass. But what disturbed doctors the most was the consistency. These weren't people sharing stories with each other and influencing memories. Many of them came in separately, unaware that others were describing the same thing. And yet the details lined up with eerie precision. The paralysis, the shadow presence, the buzzing, the light, the intense fear. In normal sleep paralysis cases around the world, experiences vary widely. But in Nome, they followed a pattern. Then came the missing time. Several patients reported that during these episodes they would suddenly lose awareness and later wake up hours later with no memory of what happened in between. Clocks showed time had passed, and in some cases people woke up in different positions than when the paralysis began. A few even claimed they woke up in different rooms of their house. They couldn't explain how they got there. One woman told family members she remembers seeing the shadow figure at the foot of her bed, and then a blinding light, and nothing after that until morning. She said it felt like seconds had passed, but the clock showed nearly 3 hours were gone. Another resident reported buzzing so loud it felt like it was inside his skull before everything went black, and when he woke up, dawn was breaking. These weren't isolated incidents, they were happening repeatedly across the town. The owl connection became impossible to ignore at this point. Multiple people said that before the sleep paralysis episodes began, they had noticed a barn owl outside their window late at night, silent, watching, perched unnaturally close to their homes. Some claimed the owl appeared night after night, always right before the terrifying encounter started. To most people, owls are just wildlife. But in abduction research across the world, owls will appear with shocking frequency, often as a screen memory, something the brain substitutes for something more traumatic. Many abductees later realized that the owl they remembered didn't behave like a real animal. It didn't fly away when approached, it seemed to stare with intelligence. In Nome, people weren't studying UFO lore, they were just telling doctors what they saw. And it kept being owls. And as weeks turned into months, fear spread quietly through the community. People avoided sleeping with the lights off. Some kept their curtains closed even during the long winter nights. Others stayed up late trying to avoid falling asleep at all. Parents checked on their children more frequently. Neighbors walked each other home after dark. The wilderness had always been dangerous, but now the homes didn't feel safe either. But what made everything worse was the paralysis cases often lined up with the disappearances. Someone would report repeated nighttime encounters days or weeks before, and later they would vanish or be found dead far from town. Families began whispering what no one wanted to say out loud, that whatever was causing these experiences wasn't just in people's heads, that something was visiting, watching, interacting, and sometimes taking people. Authorities never connected the two officially. Sleep paralysis stayed a medical issue. Disappearances stayed tragic accidents. But for the people living through it, the overlap felt impossible to ignore. Too many identical experiences, too many timelines lining up, too many people reporting fear before they vanished. It felt like the town was being slowly studied, observed, and tested. And in Act 4, we're going to go look at the bigger picture. Why the owl imagery appears in encounters around the world, how similar experiences have been reported across the continents, and why Nome's events match classic abduction parameters almost perfectly. And then we'll ask the questions that make this truly terrifying. What if the disappearances aren't accidents at all? What if they're part of something much, much larger? Holy nuts. All right, so let's... what's going on? What am I catching my foot on down here? Oh, okay. Yeah, one of my many cables around here. So let's break this down. With what these people were saying they were seeing in their rooms. We have a baseline of what we understand sleep paralysis to be as. We have the pressure on the chest. The figure in the room. Oftentimes, sleep paralysis is accompanied with a terrifying feeling. The feeling of being watched. There's also the sensation of having your chest sat on. That is a common thing with sleep paralysis. However, we're only seeing 2 or 3 of the things in the checklist for sleep paralysis here with these people in Nome. And there are some things happening with them that don't necessarily happen in sleep paralysis. So let's crack that one first. The buzzing in the ears, the ringing in the ears. That's not a sleep paralysis thing. Generally, it's silence. It's dead silence. If a person experiencing sleep paralysis notices anything, it's quiet and heartbeat in their ears. And generally, 3/4 of the time, people experiencing sleep paralysis is going to hear like footsteps outside. And in rare occasions, like footsteps, the door opens, somebody walks in. And in very, very rare occasions, the person will approach the bed and lean over real close. So we did have a few instances here in Nome where there is a shadowy figure in the room, usually standing in the corner, which kind of falls on par with sleep paralysis. Sometimes that figure will approach the bed. Sometimes it'll be standing at the foot of the bed. Sometimes it's standing in the corner. There was one case where the shadowy figure leaned over the person's bed and got so close he could feel them. However, there are some other things with the shadowy figure that don't fall in line with sleep paralysis. And the big one that I noticed in this investigation is the shadowy figure will be in the room and they'll get a flash of light outside their window and the shadow figure will still be there. Generally speaking, when I say this in like 9 times out of 10, shadowy, the shadow figures that somebody would see during sleep paralysis would never get light shown on them. You would think because they're shadowy, that once a light does happen, they would go away. It's, it's in the name, shadow person, shadow figure. So when there's a light shown through the window and the shadow figure is clearer, you're not dealing with a shadow figure there. You're dealing with a physical entity. And I think that this does lend a little bit of credence to the idea that these might be actual alien abductions. Then there's the owl thing. We talked about this a little bit ago. Barn owls are not native to Alaska. They are not meant to be seen there. They say in extremely rare instances will barn owls be seen in Alaska, yet a pretty good number of these people seen a barn owl. And then there's the one that doesn't make any sense, and that's the lights. Looking at it through an investigative point of view, the lights don't make sense. What does make sense is maybe this is a legitimate case of alien abduction, extraterrestrials, and what we're seeing is the ship coming in. Guys, come on. I mean, how many times have we seen a traditional, illustration or depiction of an alien abduction, and there's always some type of craft, a beam of light comes down. Think of the scene from Fire in the Sky. Everybody's seen Fire in the Sky. Dude is cool. He's standing underneath the UFO. He gets blasted with the beam of light. He gets thrown back. He's paralyzed, and they suck him up with the beam of light. I can't tell you where this originates from. The original case of Betty and Barney Hill back in the 1950s was the first legitimate, as we've said on this podcast, we said that it was actually paranormal, that it actually happened, but it was the first case that clearly depicted alien abduction. However, there was never a beam of light come down and scoop them up. In the Betty and Barney Hill case, there was them approaching the craft, boom, flash of light, they're inside the craft. So it stands to reason, sure, maybe they got hit with a beam of light and they were shot up into the craft. I don't know. I can't tell you. Should we just Google it? Who was the first one to? Who was the first alien encounter case to show that they were being shot up to a craft by a beam of light? Ooh, interesting. So while reports of strange, brilliant lights in the sky date back centuries, one of the earliest modern, widely documented cases involving a distinct beam of light, specifically associated with physical close-up encounters, was the 1957 Antonio Villas-Boas abduction claim in Brazil. This preceded the famous 1958 Betty and Barney Hill case and the 1975 Travis Walton case, which was the Fire in the Sky case. A Brazilian farmer claimed that a landed craft emitted a blinding white light before beings emerged, and he reported being taken aboard a hovering star-like machine emitting a specific bright light. And so it also mentions that in 1958 in Betty Barney Hill, they reported bright shifting lights following their cars. And then the Travis Walton incident in 1975 was the one that inspired the movie Fire in the Sky. That's the one where he was legitimately hit with the beam of light thrown back, paralyzed, and he was pulled up into the craft with a beam of light. So I guess we need to do an investigation on that one. That's a new one to me. I never heard of that guy. So it's interesting to know that there is some foundation here, that we're seeing a lot of details that do lend authenticity to their cases of being just sleep paralysis, right? But then we're also dealing with some variables that are not necessarily seen at all in sleep paralysis. The owl, the lights coming through the windows, the shadow figures being cast with light and still being visible. That's not necessarily a sleep paralysis thing. So the way it's presented by, abduction believers is that these are people legitimately being abducted. The sleep paralysis isn't sleep paralysis. It's them being paralyzed by the extraterrestrials. All right, take that for what it's worth. All righty. I've rambled enough. Let's get on to Act 4, everybody. Act 4, the owls, the sky, and the pattern that nobody wanted to see. Excuse me just a second. I'm going to imbibe just a moment. This beer, it's got just the right undertone. It reminded me of Fruity Loops, or not Fruity Loops, the music editing software. Fruity Pebbles. Like I got notes of Fruity Pebbles. That was really weird. I've been drinking that one all night. So as the strange nighttime encounters continued in Nome, one detail kept returning with unsettling consistency: the owls. At first, people dismissed them as nothing more than wildlife, or normal part of living in Alaska. But the longer the experiences went on, the harder it became to ignore. It's crazy to see how often these birds appeared at night, right before sleep paralysis episodes began. Residents described barn owls perched unnaturally close to windows, sometimes staring directly inside for long stretches of time without moving. A few said the birds seemed almost oversized, their eyes reflecting light in a way that felt wrong, too bright for normal animals in the dark. And what made it stranger was how these barn owls behaved. In a region where wildlife usually bolts at the first sight of human movement, these birds didn't flinch. People waved at them, turned lights on, walked closer to the glass. The owls stayed exactly where they were, watching silently. Then later that night, the paralysis would begin. So I'm curious, at this point, I've never actually seen an owl perch on a windowsill on the outside. Am I the only one thinking about that? So yes, owls may occasionally perch on window frames, windowsills, or nearby ledges of the house. While primarily preferring trees, they are attracted to residential areas by easy prey like mice and insects, warmth, or suitable, quiet spots for roosting during the day. They are often seen on porches or balconies. So let's see. Would it be considered strange to have an owl stare through your window? While having an owl stare through a window might feel eerie, unsettling, or even supernatural due to folklore, it is not considered strange from a wildlife biology perspective. It is a relatively common occurrence in suburban areas, often indicating that the owl is curious, hunting, or has become accustomed to human presence. Why owls stare through windows? Hunting, food source. Owls are attracted to areas with high rodent activity. A window might be adjacent to a spot where they are hunting. Curiosity. Owls are curious creatures, and they may be investigating lights in the windows. Territorial behavior, prey confusion. If an owl is seeing a pet or a small dog inside, it may be checking to see if the animal is accessible. But that doesn't really answer my question, though. But is it strange for them to stay? Is it strange for them to stare for a long time in a window? We gotta ask these questions. So while having an owl stare into a window is rare and often considered creepy due to folklore, it is not necessarily strange behavior for the bird itself. It's likely scanning for prey, resting in a safe spot, or observing its reflection. Owls are nocturnal, but seeing one during the day near human activity is unusual, just a random occurrence. Okay. I mean, that gives me a little more information, but I don't know. If a person's laying there sleeping, they have no reason to stare into a window, right? So I don't see why these owls would, and as skittish as they are, especially in Alaska, not to mention it's an owl that's not supposed to be in Alaska. I mean, how close have any of us have ever been to an owl? 500 foot away is the closest I've been. And it was at the top of a tree. It knew I couldn't get to it. But if it's at my windowsill and I can get up right next to it and I throw my hands at it to try to get it to go away and it doesn't move, something is strange there. They're not curious. They're not looking for prey. There's something weird going on there. Something really weird. All right, let's see. What's next? Did we do Act 4? Did we do Act 4? No, I don't think we did Act 4. We did Act 3, right? I'm confused. I think we're at Act 4. I think we're at Act 4. If I start repeating myself, somebody say something. But I don't think we've touched Act 4 yet. So in Act 4, the owls, the sky, and the pattern nobody wanted to see. But we're going to look at the patterns, what we're seeing in the grand scheme of things here. Yeah, because the last act was about the experiences in the bedroom. The experiences.
The experiences in the bedroom.
So this is Act 4, everybody. Act 4. The owls, the sky, and the pattern nobody wanted to see. So as the strange nighttime encounters occurred and continued to occur in Nome, one detail kept returning with unsettling consistency. The owls. At first, people dismissed them as nothing more than wildlife, a normal part of Alaska. But the longer the experiences went on, the harder it became to ignore how often these birds appeared right before sleep paralysis episodes began. Residents described owls perched unnaturally close to windows, sometimes staring directly inside for long stretches of time without moving. A few said the birds almost seemed oversized, their eyes reflecting light in a way that felt wrong, too bright. Oh, yeah, we started Act 4. I'm sorry. Now I'm with you. What made it stranger was how these owls behaved. In a region where wildlife usually bolts at first sight of human movement, these birds didn't react or flinch. For the people of Nome, this wasn't just an eerie piece of the puzzle. But for researchers who studied alien abduction cases around the world, it was a chilling red flag. Because owls appear again and again in encounter stories, not just in Alaska, but across North America, Europe, and beyond. One of the most famous examples came from Whitley Strieber, who described repeatedly seeing owls outside his cabin before experiencing what he later believed were abduction events. In his book Communion, Strieber wrote about waking up to glowing-eyed owls standing unnaturally close to his windows, only to later realize those memories didn't behave like real encounters with animals. Over time, he began to suspect that the owl imagery was a screen memory, something the mind created to mask a more traumatic experience. And he wasn't alone. Across decades of reported encounters, people described seeing owls where owls shouldn't be, acting in ways owls don't. Many later realized that the memories didn't make sense. Some recalled the owl's face suddenly transforming into something humanoid. Others remembered bright light immediately afterward and missing time. The pattern was so common that abduction researchers began treating owl sightings as possible psychological substitute, a familiar image the brain used to shield itself from something far more disturbing. And when those reports began surfacing in Nome, from people who had never read abduction books, never watched UFO documentaries, and weren't immersed into paranormal culture, it sent a chill through anyone who noticed the overlap. Because the experiences matched almost perfectly. The watching presence, the paralysis, the buzzing sound, the bright light, the missing time, and right before it all started, the owl. And then there were the lights in the sky. Long before disappearances made headlines or inspired movies, rural communities across Alaska had quietly reported strange aerial phenomena. Silent glowing objects moving across the tundra. Bright flashes that appeared and vanished without a sound. Lights that changed direction instantly, defying anything known to fly. In Nome, these sightings lined up unnervingly close to some of the disappearance timelines. People reported strange lights hovering on the horizon the same week someone vanished. Others recalled seeing bright flashes the night before a body was found far outside town. A few said they watched glowing objects drift slowly over frozen rivers before shooting upward at incredible speed. Again, each story on its own could be dismissed, but together they formed a pattern. And when researchers compared Nome's reports to classic abduction cases worldwide, the similarities were impossible to ignore. In countless encounters, witnesses described strange lights in the sky before nighttime visitations began. Many recalled seeing glowing craft hovering silently over remote areas. Others experienced intense fear followed by paralysis and missing time. Some later disappeared. Others were found disoriented, miles from where they should have been. Nome wasn't an outlier. It was following that same blueprint. And what made this realization so disturbing was the timeline. The Inupiat legends told long before airplanes, satellites, or modern technology described beings that came from the sky, visited people at night, and lured them away into the wilderness where they were never seen again. Generations later, modern residents were experiencing shadow figures, glowing lights, paralysis, and disappearances, wrapped in new language but carrying the same core story. It was as if the phenomena had always been there, just interpreted differently through time. Spirits once, aliens now, but the experience itself remained eerily consistent. Researchers who later studied the Nome cluster began describing it not as random tragedy, but as a concentrated flap, a region where unusual phenomena seemed to spike intensely for years before fading again. Similar flaps have been recorded in Brazil, rural England, parts of Canada, and even the American Southwest. Each time, the same elements appeared. Strange lights, nighttime encounters, missing time, psychological trauma, and in some cases, unexplained deaths or disappearances. Nome fit the pattern almost perfectly, which raised a terrifying possibility. What if the people who vanished weren't simply lost to the wilderness? What if they were part of the phenomenon itself? Because if abduction researchers were right, if the owl imagery was a screen memory for the if the owl imagery was a screen memory, if the paralysis marked physical interaction, if the lights represented craft, then the disappearances around Nome might have not been accidents at all. They might have been removals, some temporary, some permanent. And the frozen tundra simply became the place where the answers disappeared. And in our final act, Act 5, we're going to confront the explanations head-on. The environmental theories, the psychological theories, the official explanations. And then the darker possibility that something intelligent was operating in Nome for years, interacting with residents in ways we still don't understand. And we'll ask the final question this case leaves behind. If it wasn't accidents, if it wasn't mass hysteria, then what was happening in the skies over Alaska? Yeah, Yeah, this is good. This is this is one of the best written scripts we've had since, season 1, since Phoenix Lights, our first episode in season 1. Excellent, absolutely stellar writing. This story writes itself because this is not a fabrication. This is a real thing. This shit actually happened. People disappeared. So see, we got a whole bunch of people on YouTube. Don't go away. Don't run away just because I said something. Welcome, friends. An overwhelmingly large number of people are watching tonight. We are live right now. Thank you for being here. You're welcome to type into chat. We have speech chat active. Tonight we are discussing the disappearances in Nome, Alaska, and we're drawing parallels between the disappearances, alien abductions, possible alien abductions, and these mass numbers of people that have disappeared in Nome, Alaska. So I was listening to a podcast this week where they were talking about people disappearing in Alaska, and I just in the back of my mind drew the parallel. So let me throw some numbers at you. So unexplained differences connected to Nome, Alaska in a chronological order. October 16, 1976. September 30, 1982. August 29, 1989. November 18, 1990. October 21, 94. September 7, 95. 2 in September of 7, 1995. October 18, 98. November 2nd, 99. November 27th, 2000. October 5, 2004. June 24th, 2016. October 26, 2018, September 23rd, 2019, August 31, 2020, and October 15 of 2020. These disappearances have been happening since the 1970s. The first unexplained disappearance in Nome, Alaska started in 1976, and the most recent was in 2020. If the true crime part of this story really tickles your fancy, go check out Up and Vanished. It's an incredible podcast by Payne Lindsay, where he does the deep dive investigation into Florence Okpialek and Jason Balderas. And it was listening to that podcast that made me think about this. And I knew that there was some type of paranormal underlining, and I was always wondering why he didn't breach the paranormal subject. Like, I understand he's doing a true crime podcast. Shout out Payne Lindsay if you're out there. Hey, man. Hit me up. I love your show. I'd like to talk to you about this. A long shot, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway. But yeah, there's so many people that have just disappeared in Nome, Alaska since the 1970s, and nobody's drawing a paranormal parallel between these disappearances. Sure, there are some underlying human aspects that does make some of these disappearances seem like they could be murders, like Joseph Balderas. They're saying that he was killed, but like, where is he? You know, the prevailing theory with Joseph Balderas is that he was killed by a bear. But bears leave evidence behind. A giant blood splatter, shreds of clothing, shreds of gear. There was nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I'm not convinced that Florence Okpialek and Joseph Balderas are not included into this paranormal threshold. It's a lot to take in, I know. But hey, I'm glad everybody on YouTube's here tonight. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I usually do single-digit views tonight, so seeing 16 people in YouTube tonight is really, y'all have made my night. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thank you, everybody. Let's get a round of applause for everybody on YouTube. All right, well, let's get into Act 5, Accidents, Illusions, or Something Far Darker. This is Act 5, everybody. The final act in this investigation. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to break down every single thing, every possible explanation, and figure out what's really going on. This is really People just walking off in the woods, or is there something really paranormal going on here? Let's get into Act 5. Act 5, everybody, Act 5. So by the time researchers, journalists began paying closer attention to what had happened in Nome, the official explanations were already firmly in place. Exposure deaths, alcohol-related disorientation, people getting lost in extreme conditions. In Alaska, those answers had long been enough to close most cases. The wilderness was dangerous, and tragedy was common. From a distance, the disappearances fit into the statistics of harsh environment, but up close, the details didn't quite sit right. Hypothermia can cause confusion, panic, and even the paradoxical removing of clothing in rare cases. But it doesn't explain why experienced residents repeatedly wandered impossible distances in deadly cold. It doesn't explain why search dogs lost scent trails abruptly. It doesn't explain why bodies appeared in places that had already been searched. And it certainly doesn't explain why so many people reported the same terrifying nighttime encounters before vanishing. Sidebar. I'm gonna peel away for just a second. They did talk about paradoxical removing of clothing. So this is the thing. This is a real thing. So back in season 2, or it might have been early season 2 or late season 1, we did talk about the Dyatlov Pass and what happened with them. So it was a really bizarre case where we investigated this group of cross-country skiers, hikers, going through this one remote region in Russia, and they were found in weird positions. Like, most of them had no clothing on, or they would just remove their boots, or they would be found with pieces of their face missing, which was strange, except you take into account that they were buried in snow. So when we did the Dyatlov Pass investigation, we did decide that it probably wasn't paranormal, that there was some type of legitimate explanation. And one of the legitimate explanations with the Dyatlov Pass case was the concept of paradoxical removing of clothing. So this is the thing, when hypothermia sets in, your body feels hot, hotter than it's supposed to. So a person who's experiencing hypothermia does have a chance, a rare chance, but still a chance, to just start removing clothing because they feel like they're burning up. And this is a side effect of hypothermia, and a common one. I say common. No, it's not really common. It's documented, and it's documented enough that we have a term for it, and it's called paradoxical removing of clothing. I can see how a couple of these cases are instances of paradoxical removing of clothing attributed to hypothermia. However, the people that had this happen to them were experienced outdoorsmen. They had no reason to be outside for extended periods of time unprotected. Hands down. That's just how it's supposed. Anybody, like I at my job, I work outside half the time, and it's 20 degrees outside. I'm going to wear a coat. I'm going to wear gloves. I'm going to wear a hat every time I go outside. I know I'm going to need to do that. These people live this. Negative temperatures. They know not to go outside wearing a windbreaker. But I guess, hypothermia can happen to anybody. Maybe it's zealous, thinking that they're ungettable by hypothermia. I'm tough. I've been here for 40 years. I don't need a heavy jacket. I'm just going to the liquor store down the street. Maybe that's what happened. It's hard to say. But I did want to take a little sidebar to say that paradoxical removing of clothing is rare in most cases, but it can happen. It is a side effect of hypothermia. Sidebar. We'll talk more about that towards the end. So psychologists suggested mass sleep disorders brought on by long periods of darkness, stress, and isolation. The human brain deprived of sunlight and routine can absolutely create vivid hallucinations. Sleep paralysis can feel real, and fear can amplify memory. And in theory, a community experiencing extreme conditions can produce similar symptoms. that explanation falls apart when you look at the consistency. Across different ages, backgrounds, and mental health histories, people describe nearly identical experiences. The shadow figure, the buzzing sound, the pressure on the chest, the bright light, the missing time. Not to mention the barn owl. These weren't vague nightmares shaped by rumor. They were reported before residents even realized that others were experiencing the same thing. And then there were the lights in the sky. Psychological stress doesn't produce shared UFO sightings across multiple witnesses. Sleep disorders don't create bright objects hovering over the tundra that move intelligently. Environmental hardship doesn't explain why these phenomena line up so closely with the disappearance timelines. And every explanation covered part of the story. None covered all of it. Which leaves the uncomfortable possibility that something else was happening alongside the harsh realities of life in Alaska. When researchers compared Nome's cases to classic abduction patterns reported worldwide, the overlap became impossible to ignore. The paralysis matched thousands of accounts from people who believed they had been physically interacted with. The missing time aligned with reports from individuals who later recalled being taken aboard craft. The shadow figures mirrored descriptions of non-human beings seen during nighttime encounters. And the damn owl imagery, repeated again and again across continents, fit perfectly into the long-documented phenomena of screen memories. Even the disappearances followed a similar pattern seen in high strangeness flaps. People would experience encounters. Some would continue to live with the trauma, while others would vanish under strange circumstances, and authorities could chalk it up to accidents. Nome wasn't unique. It was part of a much larger global mystery. And of course, there is no physical proof that extraterrestrials were operating in Alaska, no recovered craft, no verified footage, no biological evidence that could stand up in a courtroom, but there is something just as disturbing. And that's the patterns. Human history is full of random tragedy, but when the same experiences repeat across cultures, time periods, locations, with the same details, the same sensations, and the same aftermath, randomness becomes harder to believe. The people of Nome didn't share stories until after the fear was already there. They didn't watch UFO documentaries before seeing shadowy figures. They weren't searching for aliens when they were reporting owls at their windows. They were just telling doctors what was happening to them. And what they described matched reports from strangers around the world who had never met. So what's really happened in Nome? It is possible that the harsh weather, isolation, and sleep disorders created a perfect storm of tragedy and hallucination. It's possible fear linked unrelated events into narrative where none truly existed. And it is possible that the human brain, under extreme conditions, filled in the terrifying blanks. But it's also possible that something intelligent was interacting with people in that region for years, since the 1970s, watching, visiting and studying, and occasionally removing. The frozen wilderness may have been the killer. It may have been simply where the evidence disappeared. The movie inspired by these events, The Fourth Kind, dramatized hypnosis sessions and found footage, but the real story is far more unsettling. There's no single smoking gun, no moment where the truth is revealed, just a quiet accumulation of fear. A town where too many people described the same nightmares. A region where too many vanished without answers, and a pattern that fits disturbingly well with encounters reported across the planet. In the end, Nome leaves us with questions that has no comfortable answer. Were these simply tragic coincidences of living in one of the harshest environments on the earth, or was something else sharing that wilderness with the people who lived there? Something that didn't belong, something that came in the night. Something that didn't always bring people back. And that's the horror at the heart of this case. Not that we don't know what happened, but that every possible explanation, natural or paranormal, is terrifying in its own way. Because either people were slowly being claimed by one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth, or something intelligent was operating just beyond the edge of human understanding. And if it was the second one, Nome may not have been unique. It may have just been one of the few places where the pattern became impossible to hide. That brings a conclusion to Act 5, everybody. So we all ready to make our conclusions about what we think is really going on here? I'm going to give you all a few minutes to think about what's going on. I see we got a bunch of people on YouTube. Thanks for being everybody on YouTube. Glad you're all here. A quick little round of applause.
Have you seen the Jodie Foster season of True Detective?
No, I haven't. Oh, Confusion. What's going on, buddy? No, I want to watch True Detective.
It's got this stuff in it.
Really?
It's awesome.
So there's a podcast that's getting major traction right now called Up and Vanished. One of my favorite investigative journalists does it. His name's Payne Lindsay, incredible investigative journalist. If y'all like this story and you like the true crime part of it, go check out Up and Vanished. Awesome podcast. It's what moved me to write this stuff for tonight. This is just the paranormal aspect. There's so much more going on. I want to watch True Detective, but hold your thought there. Don't go anywhere, anybody. I am human and I do have to use the bathroom. I'm sorry. Give me like a minute and a half, right? And we're going to come back. We're going to break down exactly what we think, or we're going to break down exactly what I think happened. Everybody in chat is welcome to chime up, and we're going to talk about what we think's really going on in Nome, Alaska. Don't go anywhere, anybody. Please. Because I hate just talking to myself. Don't go anywhere, Confusion. I see you there. We're going to get back. We'll be right back. Hold on, folks. I'll be right back. I love this camera so much. Yeah, I've in another life I was a photographer, and I have a massive collection of cameras. The last count was like 230 cameras. The oldest one is from 1918, and the newest one is from 2026. Very old cameras, very new cameras. I love cameras. I collect them, all ages, all sizes, all styles. When it comes to cameras, it's like booty. I don't discriminate. They're all great. But anywho, it's I'm in the middle of a project. So since you like photography, I will tell you I'm in the middle of a project that I have a bunch of old cameras from like the 60s and 70s that I really like the way the image comes across through those cameras. I have a couple old digital cameras. I'm going to tear them down and see if I can't find a way to put like a digitizer from a digital camera in one of my older cameras, so I can use them like a digital camera, but it's through the old camera. You see what I'm saying? It will probably take me a year or two to figure it out, but I'll get it.
I get it.
Since we're talking about it, I'm going to show you what my favorite camera is. I love this camera so much. So this is the Argus Super 75. I love this camera. This camera was issued to standard infantry during World War II, and when I found my Super 75, it was rusted shut, and when I finally got it open, it had an original roll of film in it from the 1940s. So I sealed it, sent it off to a company, and they developed the images, and they said, well, there was only 2 or 3 on there, but they were from World War II, I'm back. Hello, friends. Sorry about that. I do have to use the bathroom occasionally. Usually it happens sooner. I was just so excited to see so many people on YouTube watching tonight. I'll be honest. Only usually have like 2 people watching. We've got 20 tonight. And I have the nervous sweats, not gonna lie. I hope this podcast is being as entertaining as it is to me, or being as entertaining to you as it is to me. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Anyway, let's break this thing down. Telling you not to go makes you want to leave? No! Confusion, don't go. Don't go anywhere, Confusion. I promise. Sorry, I'm so excited that there's so many people here tonight that I'm just bewildered. Absolutely bewildered. So yeah, let's break this thing down. Let's figure out what is really going on in Nome, Alaska. So first and foremost, I see the parallels between the sleep paralysis and the stories that these guys are saying. All right? What I'm hearing is not new. Generically speaking, 3/4 of what they're reporting is evidence of sleep paralysis. And in the state of sleep paralysis, well, let's break this thing down. We did talk about sleep paralysis, the end of season 2.
Great episode.
It was a good episode. It was a very good episode. I'm still very pleased with it. What we learned was when you're in the appropriate state for sleep paralysis to kick in, your body... So what happens? When you're dreaming, your brain releases a copious amount of chemicals to paralyze you while you're dreaming, to keep you from acting out your dreams. So when sleep paralysis happens, the chemical released in your body to keep you paralyzed is still prevalent, but your brain is awake. Your eyes can move. You can do everything except move your body. And what it technically is a bleed over between the waking self and the sleeping self. So imagine if you were sitting in a chair. Say you're sitting in a chair like I'm sitting here now. Your brain releases the chemicals to paralyze you for sleep. And your mind starts to dream while your eyes are open. Anything could happen. Anything. Right? So, I am almost willing to discount the majority of the visuals that these people are seeing. Almost. Except for the fact that they're all seeing the same thing. Which is strange. Let's start with the shadow figure. The shadow figure is a prevalent figure in sleep paralysis. It's common. We know about the shadow figure. I will say that in the event of the light coming through the window and shining on the shadow figure and it still being there was a different thing. I've never heard of that before. That specific instance, I wouldn't call that sleep paralysis. There were a few cases where during sleep paralysis in Nome, Alaska, people had pressure on their chest. That's sleep paralysis. There were instances where the shadow figure is standing at the foot of the bed. That's sleep paralysis. There was one instance where the shadow figure got close, like up in their face. That's sleep paralysis. This happens. I've been fortunate enough to I've only had the paralyzing effect of sleep paralysis. I haven't had like the hallucinations involved with it, thank God, because I probably wouldn't have reacted well. However, the owl. The owl is one of the things that I can't write off. I can't write that off as sleep paralysis. And 3/4 of that is because in the world of alien abduction, an owl is a common thing. It is often seen by individuals before an instance of alien abduction. So let's break it down the way the movie used it. So in the movie The Fourth Kind, the owl is used as a placeholder in your memory, right? So you saw something that you can't physically handle seeing. So what your brain does is puts a placeholder in there. It replaces what you saw that your brain knows that you can't handle, and it replaces it with something else. Like is it No Man's Sky? The game No Man's Sky, where you can turn on arachnophobia, and if you have a fear of spiders, it replaces the spiders in the game, anything that looks like a spider, with an image of a cat. Same thing. This is what we're dealing with here. Your brain saw something that it knows you couldn't handle, so it put a placeholder in its place. It knows you can't handle the spiders, so it gives you a kitten. It knows you can't handle the extraterrestrials and what happened to you because of them, so it gives you an owl. Furthermore, the barn owl that is often seen by people in Nome is considered an extremely rare occurrence in Alaska. It's usually like a one-off, like one owl. And he's probably confused, doesn't know where he's going. For dozens of them to see a barn owl, which should not be in Alaska, is hard to reconcile. It's really hard to reconcile. It really is. Then there's the buzzing sound. The buzzing sound, the sensation, that is not necessarily tied to sleep paralysis, but more along the lines of extraterrestrials, alien abduction. Generally, an electric buzzing is a prevalent signal during alien abduction because you're dealing with a lot of electromagnetic frequencies, and higher electromagnetic frequencies you can actually feel. Long story short, you have iron in your blood, and iron is magnetic. Electromagnetic frequencies are the most common type of field in paranormal events. Electromagnetic, they're magnetic. It's a magnetic field created by electricity, and your blood is affected only in higher concentrations, grasping at straws. But still, in a very high concentration, an electromagnetic field you should be able to feel. Because you have iron in your blood. It's what makes it red. Well, partially. But iron is magnetic. But it would take a really, really high electromagnetic field to do that. Whatever. Here or there. Whatever. And then there's the lights. I don't know how to explain the lights outside of anything other than alien abduction, right? I mean, what else could it be? I mean, outside of maybe like one or two cases, could be somebody standing outside their window with a flashlight, but who would want to be outside somebody's window in Nome, Alaska in the middle of the night, right? I'm not, if I'm rambling in circles, tell me. But, there is some sound information behind what I'm saying here. There's no reason outside of something like the X-Files, right? Where you've got a guy with an incredible gift who can paralyze people with their minds and make them hallucinate. What else is causing all of this other than extraterrestrial abduction, right? It's where else could it go? Unless they're dosing everybody in the town with LSD and then disappearing one of them every couple of years. So then there's the disappearances. The scent trails ending in the middle of nowhere. Finding the bodies in hundreds of miles away with no footprints leading up to them. People saying, oh, I'm just going to go next door to borrow a cup of sugar or what have you. And then they're gone. Poof, from the face of the earth. A lot of that shit doesn't make sense. Now, there was a few. Sure, we could probably chalk 2 or 3 up to the paradoxical removing of clothing and hypothermia. Maybe somebody got a little too big for their britches and decided, to wear a windbreaker instead of a heavy parka, and hypothermia set in. Sure. But the ones that just disappear, it's really, really hard to say. It really is. But what gets me the worst is individuals, before talking to each other, went to medical professionals, went to police, and made reports before talking to each other. And it was only after the fact that they realized that their stories line up. They're all similar. The only thing that I could draw a parallel to is back in the 60s when they were dosing hundreds of people with LSD. And then you're dealing with, we're dealing with something else here. It's a different storyline, but essentially these people, hundreds of people were dosed with LSD unknowingly, and afterwards they found out that they all saw the same hallucination. It's the only parallel I can draw outside of extraterrestrial visitation. So I'm going to say, unequivocally and with a full heart, that tonight's episode, The Disappearances in Nome, Alaska, the stories that inspired the movie The Fourth Kind, is really legitimately paranormal. We're dealing with it. I feel like this is exactly the type of case somebody like myself looks for. This is exactly what somebody like me looks for. There's so many unknowns. Like, sure, you could say, show me the evidence that they're really being scooped up by aliens. Well, on the flip side of that coin, show me the evidence that they're not being scooped up by aliens, right? So now let me shoot off all my alien sounds. Here we go.
I'm not saying it's space aliens, right? But it goes without saying it's freaking space aliens.
Aliens. Ancient astronaut theorists propose.
So I think we're really dealing.
2 hours.
2 hours. Jeez, yeah, you came right at the end.
Paranormal.
Hold on, everybody. Let's give a quick shout out to Poke Your Eyes Out here.
BLAST.
Glad you're here. Oh, I threw a 3 in there. Wow, how did I do that?
Go check out Poke Your Eyes Out Radio at twitch.tv/PokeYourEyesOutRadio and go show them some love.
So if you like this background sounds we're using here, this is a generous, very, very generous contribution by Poke Your Eyes Out Radio. Everybody get a round of applause for Poke Your Eyes Out Radio for this incredible backing track we've used. This track has really set the tone for this entire investigation tonight. It was so good. Poke, you need to go back and just you need to watch this whole episode again. It's so good. The writing came out excellent. The story was told so well, and we're dealing with a real case of something I believe is truly paranormal. I think these people are being fucked with alien. They're fucked with by aliens.
Aliens.
Yeah, it's aliens at this point. It's aliens. Aliens just scooping these motherfuckers up. But thanks for being here, Poke. But yeah, I think this is legitimately paranormal. I'll give you another stamp. Whoop, there you go. Paranormal. Yeah, I need to tie a sound to that. But anyway, yeah, this was an incredible investigation. What an incredible story to tell and to share with everybody. And this is a real thing.
At least I made it and could let you know that you were super cool.
Well, shucks. Thank you so much. You're super cool for making this awesome backing track that we've been using. It was so perfect for this episode. It was spooky and eerie enough, and I feel like this is almost the audio that was like playing in the background of the movie that was inspired by this case, The Fourth Kind. And if you haven't seen it, go out and see it, please, people. Go watch The Fourth Kind. Incredible movie. Mila Jovovich, Will Patton in there. I love Will Patton. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. He does Will Patton does a lot of audiobooks for Stephen King. Phenomenal actor. Just go watch it.
He'll make more soon.
Hey, this is great. This is perfect. This really set the tone. Kudos on the looping, by the way. I noticed like the last note of the end of the track fits perfectly at the beginning. Kudos. You did an excellent job. But yeah, if y'all haven't seen The Fourth Kind, go out and see it, and this will make some more sense. And if you're interested in, like the true crime part of this, and I'm not paid to say this, I'm just saying it because I'm a fan. Go check out the podcast Up and Vanished. Payne Lindsay, stellar voice. This dude's got a voice. Made for podcasting. He does this super deep dive investigation into the disappearance of Florence Okpialek and Joseph Balderas. Joseph Balderas, is that right? Joseph or James Balderas? Joseph Balderas? James? Hold on, let me pull them up. I'm going to read their names off one more time in the dates that everybody disappeared.
This track also has a theremin I can play on the keyboard.
I
thought it would be less loopable.
No, the theremin's good. It's just I feel like the theremin kind of takes away from the ambience a little bit sometimes. So again, just to drive home that this was a real thing. These people actually disappeared. 1976, Donald Adams. 1982, geez, half of these are like native last names. Wow, there's like 3 people from the same family that disappeared. September 30, 1982, August 29, 1989, November 18, 1990, October 21, 1994, September 7, 1995, September 7, 1995, 2 in one day, October 18, 1998, November 2nd, 1999, December 27, 2000, October 5, 2004, June 24, 2016, October 26, 2018, September 23, 2019, August 31st, 2020, and October 15 of 2020. These people have been disappearing since 1976. And nobody's paying attention. Now, admittedly, a few of these probably do have legitimate, human interaction. There may have been a couple of these people that were murdered. Check it Up and Vanished. You'll see what I mean. But a lot of these don't make sense. And that's why we did this investigation tonight, because it's so many of them, 27 of them altogether. Unexplained disappearances connected to Nome, Alaska. It's hard to look the other way when so many people are disappearing. Per capita, one of the highest cities in the United States. And it's just wild that they're just disappearing in weird ways. And I think tonight maybe could throw a wrench into a normal conversation, that we're not just explicitly dealing with the human aspect of people disappearing, but we could be dealing with something extraterrestrial, something paranormal that's going on that we just don't fully understand yet. So with that being said, we're about to wrap this thing up. Thank you to everybody watching on YouTube tonight. Let's fade out this music and let's get into our freaking intro music so we can roll this thing up. Thank you to everybody watching on YouTube tonight. Incredible numbers. I've never done more than 3 on YouTube, and we had 21 at the peak. I'm stoked. Thank you everybody that was here from YouTube tonight. Thank you everybody from Twitch. Poke your eyes out. Thanks again for your incredible backing track for the show. James, I see you were here on YouTube. Thanks for popping in. You're here every week. I know you are. Worlds of Confusion, you're the best. I'm glad you're here. You rock and roll all day long, sweet Susie. Let's see, did we get any new followers or subs tonight? No, I don't think so. But that's okay. That's okay. If anybody has their own paranormal story, tale, case, or claim, or an idea for your future episode, you can scan this QR code up here, or you can email me at beyondshadowspodcast@gmail.com. I will read your email. We will see. We will talk all about it. I don't care if you send me spam email, something, just to give me something to do in the inbox. I get lots of spam. Lots and lots of spam. But that's just the way it goes. That's part of being a podcaster, I guess. Again, if this story interests you, if you want to hear the true crime part of this story, go check out Up and Vanished, the Land of the Midnight Sun. I think it's what the series was called. I forget. But go check out Up and Vanished, hosted by Payne Lindsay. Excellent podcast. If anybody watching tonight knows Payne Lindsay, give him a shout out. Hey, I'd love to interview you and ask you these paranormal questions about what's going on in Nome, Alaska. And again, thank you to all my supporters. Thank you everybody that's popped in tonight. Thank you all of you on YouTube. What an incredible showing out on YouTube tonight. I've never had so many people from YouTube. Never. Thank you, every single one of you. You don't have to hit the subscribe button, but I'm just glad you're here. Glad somebody was listening. Thanks again, Poker Eyes at Radio. James Cappy, World of Confusion. Jeez, who else was here? Hef was here for like 2 minutes and then bailed. That's fine. He's got a thing going on. Thanks, everybody. We're going to wrap this thing up. And I look forward to seeing everybody next week. Don't know what we're going to do. Probably something ghost related. We're about due for a good ghost or cryptid, so we'll see what happens. All right, let's take this thing out of here. Let's take it out of here. So in the end, Nome leaves us with a question that has no comfortable answer. Were these simple, tragic consequences of living in one of the harshest environments on Earth? Or was something else sharing that wilderness with the people who lived there? Something that didn't belong. Something that came in the night. Something that didn't always bring people back. So if you find yourself in Nome, Alaska, 3 o'clock in the morning, wide awake, unable to move, paralyzed, and you see a shadow figure in the corner and an owl perched on the windowsill staring with its black, unseeing eyes, unmoving. Don't panic. Don't give in. Open your eyes, pay attention, and listen. Because you don't know what's coming next, but whatever you do, make sure that you follow me.
Beyond the Shadows.
Good freaking night, everybody. Have a good one. I'll see you all next week. Have a good one.
It's alive! It's alive!
would it ever die?
And this monster starts running right at me.
Annihilated by nuclear bombs.
Beast is not dead. I put 4 bullets into him.
Oh, you're crazy.
But I saw that monster too. All I want is for someone to believe me.
Contaminated.
Face. Horrible. Look like it would scare you to death.
All right, let's get to work.